Hello, hello, hello. It's me, Michelle, your vanilla horror host of Coffee Fueled Stories. And we have another fresh brewed episode for you. Today, we have Nic Winter from Scotland. Hello, Nick. How are you?
Hello. Hi, Michelle. How are you?
Very good. So, to let the listeners know, we have been trying to do this for I keep wanting to say 3 years, but I checked the time on the book and I think it's only 2 years, but it feels like three. And not in a bad way. It's just
Totally three, right?
because it's just well, so the first book got lost and I felt terrible, and then you had to send a second book, and then this one made it. And so that's why I feel like it feels
Yay.
like 3 years. So I want
I know everything I touch is a disaster, so it didn't surprise me that it got lost the first time.
I
It's a mystery, see? I
so
write and send mysteries as well.
I know I'm so bummed. Somebody got the first one, and like spent like you sent some really cool stuff with it. So I'm gonna try to show this here. Um, Hopefully it'll show. So there's this cool little tartan, whoops, that came with the bookmark that you sent. And so this whole bookmark, by the way, 20 years ago, I probably could have done this cross stitch, but I looked at the instructions and I looked at the size of the cross stitch, and I was like, Nick, I'm gonna have to buy a magnifying glass to do this.
It's absolutely right.
I'm like, who does this?
I
And
couldn't even attend to it. Who does that in their spare time? I have no idea. Where are these people?
I know, I'm like, man, you guys have really good eyes to do this stuff because I can't. I'm like, I can't do this.
I know. I'm the lazy as a bat, so it takes me out.
I was like, so instead, the little tartan that came with it. So I rigged the tartan and the book and the tassel. So I've been using the tartan, and that's something that I actually wanted to share with you. Um, in the chat, I don't know if you are able to look in the chat. So I just created, while I was waiting to talk with you, I went online and I
Mm-hmm.
created a personal tartan. I chose the colors and I created it.
Good.
So if you
Oh,
look at the
wow.
image, there are my colors. Those are the coffee fitness, sorry, not coffee fitness unicorn, coffee field stories colors, purple, red, and then that electric green. So there's my clan right there.
Gorgeous.
Uh,
I
so
love that.
if you're gonna do a tartan, what would be the colors that
Coffee
you
thing.
choose?
Oh, I did something really un-Scottish. Like I probably have, let me think, bright yellow. I love yellow. It's very sunshiny. So I did bright yellow, black, got to get that goth in there somewhere. And I don't know, something outlandish. Purple.
Very cool. I like it. I
Which would be a
like it.
terrible combination. But I think I could make it work.
I think you could totally make it work. I'll send you the link. It was really cool. I didn't even have to pay. Like you literally, I was able to, so I know the colors, like the numbers of my colors, and I
Hmm.
punched in the colors and it pulled up those colors. And so I just dragged it onto the screen and then it created the tartan. And then
Oh,
you just tell it
perfect.
how many times you want it to repeat. And so that's when it came out with that tartan is, I was like, oh my God, I literally figured it out in like 5 minutes. I was like, I want that. But so
I love
speaking of goth, some of the stuff that you
that.
put in
Hmm.
the book made me very, very, very happy, and so definitely going to talk about some of the music you put in there, and then
Oh, good.
80s vibes. So I wore my cult T-shirt just for you.
Oh,
So
I don't. Yay! I love a bit the cult.
right,
You made it very well.
oh,
Hmm.
Ian Astbury, like I mean, come on, I mean that's
I
I just
know.
you know
Hmm.
80s like they just don't make him, they don't make them like they don't make him like him
You
anymore.
don't.
Like, oh, love that guy.
No, no.
So
Me too. Me too. I love the cult.
have you had a chance to see any 80s bands as a mom, like with your kids? Have
Mm.
you taken your kids to see like Duran Duran or Boy George or
Let me
any
think.
80s bands?
I, oh, that's a great question. Have I? Um, no, I haven't actually. I don't think I have. How disappointing is that? But they have seen like it. I never have music off in here. I live and breathe music. I have music on here all day. So the kids are teenagers now, but they are super well versed in all things, like ranging from the six. I'm a huge '60s fan as well. From the '60s right through to the '80s. After that, maybe the early '90s, I cut off. I just dwindle out somewhere to see. I don't exist after that. But the kids are very well versed in all good music, as I like to call it.
To
But I
totally.
haven't taken them. No, I don't think I've actually taken them to any concerts of particular '80s bands. But I shall. I
Yeah, I was like,
like that.
they need some Bauhaus in their life or some Love and Rockets. You know, if you're gonna go goth, I mean, that's classic right there.
Exactly, right?
Yeah, yeah. It's funny
I
this.
know. But I can remember at the time I walked into and my daughter, she'll kill me for saying this, but I went into my daughter's bedroom. This would have been about 2 years ago, maybe 2.5 years ago. And I just had this moment of like complete deja vu and that little hint of pride where I walked in and she was pinning up a Nirvana poster and I was like, oh, bit of Alice in Chains. I was like, hooray!
That's
It didn't
awesome.
last long, it lasted about a week, but still, it was there.
Awesome.
I took a photograph. I was like, I'll need to remember this moment because it's fleeting, and it was. It lasted a week, but still, I was proud.
That's hilarious. Yeah, I debated if I should wear my Rolling Stone shirt or the Cult. I was like, Rolling Stones, the Cult. Rolling Stones, the Cult. And I was like, I'm gonna go
Oh,
with the Cult. I had
yeah,
just because, 80s and goth, so I decided to go with the Cult.
absolutely.
Yeah.
That was a
So
great choice.
thank you. So let's before we get into your book, which I haven't even mentioned it to the listener, so I apologize. So Nick's book is right here, so hopefully it doesn't disappear. So we are talking about here we go. There we go. A Season to Kill, and it is a Darcy Sinclair novel, and we're gonna deep dive into this book. But you gave me so many nuggets that I wanted to talk about all of the fun nuggets that you had in there. So you had the music nuggets. So you started very early. You had mentioned Neil Young. You mentioned the Mamas and the Papas.
Neil
Um,
Young, yeah,
yeah. So I thought it was very interesting. So I wanted to
all of the
ask you,
greats,
I'm sorry.
all of the greats are in there somewhere.
Yes, yes. So my question to you is this, because of the song choices that you put in there, I wanted to ask, do you have like a
Yeah,
list of your favorite songs? And you're like, okay, this song it has such great significance to me in my life that I absolutely have to put it in this book. So do you have like a list that you
yes,
keep track? You do.
I do. Yeah, I do actually. I think I do. And well, I think I'm probably like everyone else. I if I hear something, I go, oh, I forgot about that song. Oh, that's as beautiful, or it just fits the mood that I'm going for, or it fits the scene, and so it has to go in. And then I'll backtrack, and somehow I'll find a way to fit it in because for me, the music is essential. It helps. I always think that music. I think you can hear a particular song and it takes you back to a moment in time for everybody.
Yes.
You have that one song, that one beat, that one introduction, that one verse kicking in, the chorus kicking in, and you're in a particular place. You can hear it, you can feel it, you can smell it. All the senses are going, and that's what music does for me. And so, for me, it was essential that certain songs went in certain specific places to fit the moods without it being too without it trying to be too near to the bone, oh well that word fits that scene. It had to be the music had to fit the moment in time in the book as it would do in life sort of thing, if that makes sense. And I get that when I listen to a particular piece of music, it will take me right back to that moment in time that's forever etched in my memory. And so I was trying to capture that in the book, and if that makes sense,
Yeah.
it makes sense to me.
Yeah, no, absolutely, absolutely. So for the next novel, the next Darcy Sinclair,
Mhm.
so you're going to have, can you tell us any of the songs that will be in the next book, or are you just going to
I
keep that
think
close to your chest?
it will be pretty similar. I think I'm actually working on. I'm doing a little side project that was it's I'm enjoying the book that I'm writing at the moment. I have the second Ashley St. Clair book, which unfortunately was really slowed down because I was a bit unwell the last 2 years. This year, I've started, it's very, very in its infancy, but I started the first draft of a standalone novel. And in this book, the main character is heavily into the Stones, Bob Dylan, that kind of like that mid 60s to late 60s. And so it's very heavy into that. And I'm immersing myself in the music as I'm writing it. And I'm loving it. I'm picking up pieces of lyrics and working them somehow into the mood of the scene, and I'm just having such a fun time with it. So for the second Darcy book, I think it will be likely more of the same. For this particular book, it is that kind of West Coast Monterey type of vibe going on with a little bit of that mid to late 60s Rolling Stones coming in on the, from left side. So I'm thoroughly enjoying that.
Very
It
cool. Very
helps the writing process. I don't know why, but it really does.
I love it, and everybody has a different process, and this clearly is what works for
You
you, and
do.
it gets you,
Yeah,
it,
it does. Hmm.
and I love that. And you also mention coffee so many times in this book. I literally
Do.
wrote down like all the page numbers and the different kinds of coffee that you had mentioned, and I was just like, oh, Nick, oh yes, I love this.
I know. I'm just yeah. I definitely have a problem, and I gave it to Darcy St. Clair. She also has a problem now. And yeah, I mean, the first place that came to my head in Cedarwood, which is where A Season to Kill takes place, was Roast, which is the local coffee shop.
Yeah.
Because I needed that, I wanted that place where characters could, interchange a conversation and dialogue and stuff. And so for me, a coffee shop just made a coffee shop and a pub. That's my two go-to places, in life and
Yes.
when I'm writing the same. And so it had to be Rose, I just, it was the first thing that came to mind. I need a coffee shop in there. She needs to get her addiction fixed.
I
And
love
so
it.
Rose was born.
I love it. I was telling Brandy about roast, and I was like, oh my God, I was like the food and the pastries at roast. I was just like, I want to hang out at
I know.
roast. Oh my God.
I want to as well. So
Totally.
I just created it in my head because I'm like, I really want this to exist. So it exists in my head. I just need to find it out there in the wild.
Totally, totally. I was thinking the same thing. I was like, I would just love to hang out at this place. And so I love that you created this place. And then I had to laugh because everybody's houses had names. And so there were moments where I was literally laughing out loud. Like I was just cracking up at your character, Darcy. Like she just tickled. Like I just felt very tickled. And I was just like, oh my God. I was like, Nick, that's awesome. I love that. Like literally, like I said it. And her Dorito habit. Okay, I do know that that is a direct influence of you.
Absolutely. Again, I gave my main character in my affliction, and I took absolutely no pleasure in it. I was completely ashamed of myself, but I did it anyway.
The second I read, I think like
Finish with
in
margaritas.
I literally
It was
where did
shameful.
I think I wrote Doritos on here somewhere too. I don't even remember, but it was like in the very beginning, and I was like, okay, I was like, there we go. I was like Darcy and Doritos, and so and then the cutest thing was when you said she opened up a bag and she tucked in, and I was just like, that's Nick. I was like, that's adorable. That's adorable.
Yeah, absolutely. And then I got to brush them with my hair. I'm like, okay, so classy.
But that's you
I
made
shouldn't be saying this. I apologize to everybody that's listening.
I love it because like I said. you gave your character these little human elements, and that's one of the things that it either drives me crazy because people don't realize it's very important that you need to give your characters these
Yeah,
things. So I love when authors
I think
are
so.
able to do this. And trust me, writing a novel is very difficult. Like this is not coming from a place of criticism. This is from learning the craft. And I will be the first to say
Yeah,
I suck at writing. Like I don't do novels. Like I've attempted, but I'm nowhere near
yet,
you. Yes.
yet.
Yes. But this is I learn from authors, okay, this is why it's important to give your character these elements so they do feel like a real person.
Yeah,
And you did that a lot with Darcy. Like I said,
I
I
absolutely
was
agree.
tickled.
Oh, thank you. I'm glad. That makes me so happy. Thank you so much, Michelle. I really appreciate that. Because I think that those little things that might seem inconsequential when you're writing it, but you know deep down that it will resonate hopefully with someone out there who is perhaps, does the exact same thing, and it makes them human because we all have our little foibles and quirks and that sort of thing. And I've read books where I felt that sometimes the main character can be so saccharine or so um, perfect. It's the easiest way to describe it that you think, my goodness, don't they ever have a moment where they dance in the kitchen or, you know, um, put
Yeah.
on their makeup terribly in the morning or, run outdoors with their bathrobe on or whatever that we all do, sort of thing. And yeah, so I like that when I read a main character like that, you're like, oh my goodness, that's me. Or oh, I love how she does that. Or what it just makes you feel more comfortable with the character. Like it's someone that you would like to hang out with for a bit.
Yeah,
And I think that makes a huge difference.
yeah, you
Yeah.
you humanized her. You gave her those little quirks, her silly, she has those quirky, habits. You made her
Oh
clumsy.
yeah.
So she wasn't polished, and here she is in this town of all of these, polished people. And so
Polished
she's
people. Yeah.
yeah. And so I loved that she wasn't, and she was aware of it. She was aware. Like she's like, I'm not like these people. I'm not
Completely
from here.
aware. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And
Completely
she's not
aware. Too
trying.
aware at times, and I think that she's not trying, and I love that about her that she's not trying to be like them. If anything, she wants to run 1,000 miles in the other direction, and
Totally.
I love that about her. She's
Totally.
just like me.
I do too. And that was going to be the question is like I know about the Dorito thing and the coffee thing, but like how much of are you clumsy? Like do you hurt yourself all the
Yeah,
time?
I'm a disaster. Literally a disaster. I shouldn't actually be allowed to, be outside of my own unattended. I'm horrible. So that was another.
Oh,
But to be honest, it's funny. When I say it out loud, I can see how much of myself that I wove through Darcy. Not so much in this character I'm writing at the moment, which has actually been very liberating. But I did give Darcy a lot of my um, quirks and things that I'm not too good at in life, which is like walking, navigating that, generally walking into a room without tripping over something, that sort of thing. Generally embarrassing myself. I give it all to Darcy, and I was like, "Here, you have it now." I passed the mantle on to her, so
but
it felt
she owns
great.
it. She owns it. Like I'm assuming
She
you
does
do.
own
You
it.
own it, and she does own it. And she, like I said, and
Yeah,
her
I do
husband.
know. Yeah, I know the long suffering Harry, but yeah, I do now own it. I didn't for a long time. I try to always be, I'll stand straighter and da da da. And now, as you get older, these things just seem to fade with insignificance, and you embrace your inner quirks. In fact, you want to gather more of them, I think, as you get older. So yeah.
Absolutely, absolutely. So, approximately how long did it take you to write this story? So, my first question, this is actually going to bring us back to the first story. So, why this story for your first novel? Like, what compelled you to write this story, Darcy with this town? Like, what is it that ins like, how did you create this book?
Darcy's included in my head for a long time, and she sat there just gathering dust in this little corner in my mind. And I knew that one day I would write her, and I hadn't written a book for uh, 18 years or so. I wrote my first book in my 20s, and I did nothing with it. And I still have it. It's lingering in the back of a drawer somewhere. And when the kids got a little bit older and I started to have just a smidge, a little tiny smidge of more time, I knew that it was time to do something. I wanted to do something for me, and the only thing that I wanted to do was write. So a Season to Kill came about because I'd had Darcy in my head for the longest time. And then one day I was reading, it was a true crime documentary, sorry, a true crime book. And something in the book triggered a memory for me. And all of a sudden, I had the the end scene, which I won't say for I don't want to spoil it, but the end scene where Darcy and the killer meet and they collide came into my head, and I could see the killer. I could see how they moved. I could see how they looked. I could see how they stood, how they spoke. I could see and hear it all in my head. And I could understand how what the catalyst was that got them to that point. So I always work backwards. I start at the end first, and then I work back to the beginning. And I've done that in everything I've ever written. Um, because I think I write mysteries, so it's imperative for me. I have to know the why, the who, the how did we get here? And then I work back. Um, and I thought, I I like that. I have it. I understand it. I understand why this happened. I think, of course, I had a million other things that I had to add in and other characters that I had to create. And, I always say it's a chessboard for me. And you're moving pieces around, playing chess against yourself
Yes.
until you get the opportunity when the book is finished to play it against the reader, who ultimately is your opponent as a mystery writer, I think. And I like that. It's my little thing to myself. It's like playing chess because I feel that when I pick up a psychological thriller or a mystery book that's written by a favourite author of mine, I get settled in. I get excited to play this game of wits against them instead of just enjoying the book, which I do. Of course, I love it, but I also love to look the clues. I've got to. I'm obsessed. And I'm like, let me go back. What did he say? What did she say? Well, wait a minute, and then I'll be back again. It drives me bonkers, but I can't help it. I just love it. So for me, as a mystery writer, I'm doing the same thing when I write it. It's in my head. I'm going to play chess. I'm going to leave this here. I'm going to leave that there and see if that gets picked up and connected. But the overall arc um, was I had to understand the catalyst. What was it that was the springboard for all of this that took place? And so that's why I kind of started to work back. And then I had a general time frame. I had a general over arc of the story. And then I was like, okay, I think I can do this. And I was so excited to sit down. And of course, you sit down and you start to write, and then you realize, well, I've got to create the place. I need the place, I need the full town, I need these people, I need the coffee shop and the pub and all of these things. And I love that part of it. It was so exciting. And I had recently been away for a weekend in a little place up north in the Highlands. And as I was walking through this, it was a Saturday afternoon. There was a huge church that stood in the middle of this little square, and it was beautiful. And I just stood staring at this, and there was a pub across the street, and the bells were chiming, the leaves were falling, it was autumn. And I thought, if I could have a moment in time and capture it and put that right in the book, this is where I would forever be placed. And Michelle, I can't tell you how perfect it was. It was just stunning. It was a cascade of leaves, the church, everything. It was just spectacular. And I thought, this is just perfection. This is where I want to live. I want to move, literally pack up, get 10 cats, move in here, well, I suppose I need to take the children as well, but you know what I mean? And I'd be happy. So it was perfection. And that was where Cedarwood was born, just that one moment in time. And I put the church in the book, which was the Cedarwood Parish Church. And then, of course, Jonathan, which is the minister, was born. He was never intended to be there, but he was because of the church, which is so significant. And I think I mentioned it twice in the book. But for me, in my mind's eye, it was so significant for the town, the village, because of that one moment. So I always feel that when you're out and about and something like that happens, just that perfect moment, if you capture it in your head and you see it in your book, or you see, I could bring that to life on paper, then that's the sign that that's where your book should be. And so I built it essentially around that one little scene that I had stood in that Saturday afternoon,
That is so
and
cool.
it was perfect.
It's funny that you say that because I remember reading the part where Darcy is standing. I want to say she's standing at the steps of the house, and we'll just leave it at that. But I remember specifically, she hears the bells chiming, and she mentions it. She
Yeah.
mentions standing there hearing the
Hmm.
bells, and it was so great. I
Yeah.
was like, oh, I was like, how like literally that scene is was in my head, and she was talking about the chiming of the bells and how the sound that it had made, and so you describing it like, and then you had what
Yeah.
the mamas and the papas with the music, the leaves changing, like
Hmm.
all like as you were describing it, like I could almost feel like the wind on my skin. Like I was like, I'm there too. Like how
Oh, I
cool
love
is
that. Oh,
that?
thank you.
How cool is
Thank
that?
you.
Yeah. And
Uh,
you,
well, I did. I remember writing that little bit that you mentioned, and it was so significant to me. And that's so lovely that you picked up on that. Because it was, and that was from that moment in time when I had stood in that little village in the Highlands. That Saturday afternoon.
oh, I love it. I love it. So, you had mentioned about Richard Bradshaw and Ted Bundy and narcissism. And so it's funny
Yeah.
because this was before I knew that your character Darcy was into true crime. So the reason I wrote that part down was because I wanted to ask you, is there, and because you also mentioned the Golden State Killer, I believe you mentioned in there a little bit later. I think that's
Yeah. Hmm.
so.
Yeah.
So
With
you
James D'Angelo.
are you obsessed with true crime? Like, do you watch the true
I,
crime
I,
stuff?
I do watch true crime a ridiculous amount. I really do. And it started for me, I became obsessed with uh, psychology. Before true crime was really called true crime, I guess. Back in, I mean, I was really young, maybe about 13, 12, 13, and I read um, The Stranger Beside Me by Anne Rule, who was the the pioneer of true crime writing. So if you've never read Anne Rule, she is an incredible writer. Michelle, she takes not only a true crime case, but she does it with so much empathy for the victims, and she immerses herself in it. She passed away, I think, in 2018, 2019, but she was the forefront of true crime writing, and that came from her writing her first book in the 80s, sorry, late 70s, I think it was, late 70s, um, as she was watching the events unfold across the Pacific Northwest of the victims of Ted Bundy. And but the sting of the tale of her first book, The Stranger Beside Me, is that she was, while she was writing this first book, she was working in a hotline for people who were maybe having suicidal thoughts and um, were struggling with mental health. And they would phone into this hotline, and she was a volunteer. And her friend at the volunteer hotline was Ted Bundy. And they were very close as friends, and she had no idea. that she
Oh,
was young, she'd done law enforcement. She was one of the first women to ever be in law enforcement in the state of Washington. She had done all these things, a very smart, very shrewd woman, very well read, um, and she had no idea that the guy that she worked with 3 nights a week was the
uh,
serial killer that she was writing about. And that blew my mind. I could not get my head around that. And
oh,
it fascinated me
yeah.
in the most peculiar way. I must have read the book. I read it, I went back and I reread it again. And so I decided at that moment that I wanted to study psychology, which I did. I did that first and then I switched out and I swapped to law. But it fascinated me. And so since then, and of course now in today's age, we have Netflix, we're just saturated with it. If that's if that's your thing, and it is for me because I find it incredibly interesting from a psychology point of view, and now you get immersed in the forensics, the digital forensics. There's just so much information that you could never have imagined back then when I read that first book, that where we are today with what you can learn. And so I watch a lot of it, and I do pick up a lot, and I put it into what I write. I think without too much, obviously, forensics and stuff like that. I'm not a forensic expert, and I don't have one that I can just call up. Yeah, hopefully one day. But so for now, I have to take the stuff that I glean, and then research it to make sure what I'm saying in the book is accurate, as new as I can be. But it is fascinating. And then I watch it before I go to bed and I wonder why I can't sleep. I'm like, I don't know. And you know what cats are like?
Fun,
Cats just stare at things. You're like, oh my God, what's he looking at? Why is my
right?
Alexa going off at 3 in the morning?
Right? Right?
Nightmare.
Um,
Yeah.
quick,
I've had every serial killer known to man in my garden, in my head.
yeah. This
Hell.
is why I read all the horror and the spooky stuff during the day, and I
In
do
the
what
morning,
I call it
right?
my yeah, I call it my rainbows and unicorns at night. So I read my cozy mysteries at night in bed because I do want to be able
Yeah.
to be able to sleep. But real quick, as you were
Don't blame me.
talking, I was thinking, have you had a chance to read Val
Sure.
McDermid? Val McDermid is a huge Scottish.
Scottish writer?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I read her book
Big art.
Forensics. I haven't read any of
Yeah.
her novels, but I've watched some of the TV shows. But I
Hmm.
read her book Forensics. I
Hmm.
was absolutely just mesmerized with the history of forensics. Have you
Yeah.
read it?
She's a terrific writer, actually, Val McDermott. In fact, she stays actually not too far from me, apparently. But I say that as if we're neighbours. Oh, I bump into her in the coffee shop. No, I don't. I wish I did.
Oh my God, that would be so cool.
That's a pretty
So
good.
what are you
How
drinking, Val?
cool would that be? I know, right? I know. Coffee? Okay, let's chat cooking and forensics. You should probably get a restraining order against me or something, I'm sure. But anyway, but she's she's such a gifted writer, and her novels are great as well. You would really like them, Michelle. They're dark, pretty gritty, I will say. All set in Glasgow, my birth city. So it's got a special place in my heart. But she's a terrific writer. Yeah, I absolutely agree with you. I love her
I
books.
Awesome. Have you read Mermaid Singing? I think that's the name of it. I have that one. I actually have the library book for that. I got it. I checked it
Oh no,
out, but I haven't
I
read it yet.
haven't. I have it on Kindle, but I've not read it yet either.
Okay, well, we'll have to
Ooh,
revisit this
buddy.
conversation.
Yeah.
All right. So you were talking about the chess pieces that you play with yourself
Yeah.
and the reader, and I very much feel like that happens to me too. I'm terrible. I can never just read the books. I am always like, "Ooh, is that the killer? Is that who?" Like every character. So every character you introduced, literally, I was like, "Oh, is that them? Oh, is that them? Is that so every
I
time
love
you introduce somebody new, I was instantly suspicious.
I love that. Instant suspicious of everybody.
Yes.
And it's so funny, Michelle. That was the feeling that I wanted to to rise from the book. Because I think the tagline. Oh my goodness, I'm trying to remember my own tagline, but it was know your inner circle and then look a little closer. Which, as you watch a lot of true crime, you'll know how true that actually is. You can think that you know somebody inside now, and you think that the person you see every day and you say, hi, good morning, has your best interest at heart. And sometimes it couldn't be further from the truth, which is a horrendous thought, but it's very true. And we can dress it up any way we want to make ourselves sleep better at night. But unfortunately, the truth is still the truth. And I wanted to bring that feeling to life almost and plant that seed in the reader's mind, in that you can feel very, very comfortable in a small group of friends. But if you just scratch beneath that surface that you see, or the polished neighbours that live next door, you just give it a little scratch and look that it can be a lot more tarnished just underneath that veneer, that beautiful veneer that they only allow people to see, and it doesn't always look that way behind closed doors.
Yeah, and I love so the best symbolism that I can think of is for and I don't think this is going to give anything away because I don't do spoilers. But when the super highly polished floor in the house and then there's mud, I was like, this is so significant because we know that this
Yeah,
is that polished person. This is that polished life. This is what, and everybody knows. And that no way would there ever be mud on that floor in this house. And so I was like,
never, never, no.
okay, okay, this is really
Yeah,
symbolic. And then Darcy even mentions it. She was like, yeah, no, like that would never happen. Like this person and that house, like that would never happen. And so I kind of like hung on to that nugget
exactly.
and I was like, okay. And like I said, and I'm terrible. I can't, like I said, I just can't, I'm like you. I just can't read. Everything you give me, I'm like, is that a nugget or a red herring? Is that a nugget or a red herring?
Yeah, exactly. You've got to investigate along the way. Exactly. It's like I just wish I could relax and read. I can't. I'm constantly scanning for clues or the inevitable red herrings that I'd love to create myself. And I'm like, damn it, they got me. And so I appreciate that. I love seeing kudos to a mystery right at the end. When you close the book, I think, oh my goodness, I never saw that little bit. And so, if they just catch you out with that little double twist at the end. It's superb. And some writers do it with aplomb, and I tip my hat to them all the time. And I think, well, I could learn from them. Um, but yeah, and you're right. That was actually symbolic, and as I was writing it, I thought it was a beautiful but heartbreaking segue to get into Darcy's past, which is ever present for Darcy in the book, her childhood, and when I wrote it, I wanted it to resonate with people who had been through a similar thing, or were going through a similar thing, and it had to be handled with great care. But I didn't want to linger in that dark place for too long, so I wove it through the book, as delicately but as realistically, as I could.
I love it too because you gave her the foibles, right? You gave her that clumsiness, but then when you give us her backstory, and then you give
Yeah,
us she has moments of yin yang, and you're rooting
yeah,
for her, and you're like, and you laugh with her, and yet you root for her, and then you like seriously, edge of your seat type of stuff because you didn't give us you didn't give us the killer until the very end. And you never know, like with a mystery,
very,
how soon you're going to get the killer, the resolve, right? The denouement.
yeah,
And and then there's
yeah.
like a whole lot of stories still left, but you literally took it all the way to the end. And I was like,
Very
oh,
end.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know. I had to keep just onto that very last second, until we got there. But and there was a I tried to obviously there was a few other little there was a few threads, and I waited to the end to tie them in as well because it could have been, I think, three people. It really could genuinely have been, and then I tried to tie that up with, oh, okay, so that's why that happened. That was the catalyst to that, and now that explains that. But and then the last scene that I wrote, or the penultimate scene when Darcy meets the killer at the end, and it's that that ever um, present good versus evil sort of thing. That was possibly my favourite scene to write, because I felt it was the most emotive scene. It was the most
Yeah, it was very,
truly awful scene, I
yeah, it was
think, as
very
well.
visceral.
Yeah, it was very visceral, and I did that with a great intention, because it was important to me that Darcy's past became her present in that moment, and that you understood why it was imperative for Darcy to fight back the way that she did, because it wasn't just that one monster that she was facing. She was facing the monster, which in her case was her father in that moment too. And so it was her way of putting ghosts to bed, of dragons that should have been slayed many years before. They were still there, waiting to be slayed in her present. Not just the one that was in front of her that had caused all of this heartache and this chaos in Cedarwood at that moment. It was for her past to right a wrong that should have been done a long time ago, and to right a wrong that should have been done for her mum as well. And it was so important to her in that moment. And it just felt right to write it that way. And I recrafted it. I don't know how many times. It was the only scene I really did go back and I rewrote and I rewrote because I felt it wasn't strong enough, that it wasn't intentional enough. And then I went back and I recrafted it again because I had to get that point across, to the reader and for myself, to put that moment in time for Darcy to bed finally and give her that sense of justice that always evaded her.
Yeah, and like I said, that was where I was rooting so much for her. I was like, literally, I was like, pull whatever you can up out of you and just,
Yeah,
you know,
and
um,
just throw
yeah, yeah, I was
it.
like, just yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. And so, that scene, that's what I'm saying. Like that scene, like, um, I don't think there's a spoiler, but like the physicality, like, she describes
yeah,
what's physically happening to her, and I'm like, okay, it doesn't mean you're dead, but I was like, you can fight back, like, find that fight, and
yeah.
you're rooting for her in that moment, and then
Hmm.
we get the scene, and I can't say anything more, because we don't want to give any spoilers. But so again, being able to connect to a fictional character clearly, when you can write
Hmm.
and when a reader can feel so much for a character, that's when the writer has done the correct thing. That's what I call, that's the talent, that's the
Thank
skill,
you.
and so yes, and I know that you read Agatha Christie at a young age, and that's what
Did.
created this love of mystery for you. And I felt that
Absolutely.
this
Absolutely.
this was definitely, it had, Agatha Christie elements, like I said, every time, and the way that you would introduce a character, I just felt, so I wrote, so for me it felt like it was very Murder on the Orient Express. So even though it's
Oh,
not a,
thank you.
even though it's, so the murder, right, it's a closed scene, right? The Murder on the Orient Express is closed, right? So you
Yeah.
have your characters locked. So in this case, your characters are locked in Cedarwood, if you will. So that's the enclosed
Yes.
space
Hmm.
that they're in. So it
Yeah.
just had those elements to me. So I was like, you know,
Thank you. I know it was kind of my ode to Agatha Christie, and I've said this I don't know how many times. It's funny because I see it all the time. I see it on Instagram. I see it on reviews on Amazon. I see it everywhere. I think that there's this huge misconception about Agatha Christie that her books are very quaint and cozy and twee almost. A word I hate to use, but I think it's relevant with how I think a lot of people perceive Agatha Christie's books. And personally, in my a very humble opinion, I think that that's a great disservice to Agatha Christie because if you look at the thematics of Christie's books, and written in the 20s, 30s, 40s, and 50s, for a female writer, she was writing very dark subject matters.
Yeah.
You know, you had everything in there. You had abuse, you had abortion, rape, incest, really the darkest of human psychology. Christie wrote it, and she wrote it way before anybody else ever did. And she was a pioneer of, you know, female psychology, that drive to bring out the darkest elements, particularly in familial settings with families. She really did, and she dissected it beautifully in her books, and that was her overarching thematics. And I think that that gets lost in translation with Christie's books. I think people see crumpets and tea and cucumber sandwiches and little villages, and they don't, they miss the whole point of scratching underneath that. And therein lies the darkness that just breathes like a virus
Yeah.
underneath there.
Yeah.
And that was the whole point of Christie's books, you know. And I think that there's definitely a little bit lost in translation there. And so she was a great inspiration to me when I was young, and I love to just dip in and out now and again to her books and go, yeah, you know, because she was the queen of mystery and always will be, I think.
Oh yeah.
Um, I mean, there is a tremendous amount of really talented mystery writers now, and female writers right at their peak, you know, that I read their books. I can't wait. I see a new Mary Kubica book coming out or Cheryl Le Pen, and I'm like, oh, I can't wait. You know, it's like Doritos, where are they? Margarita, here we go. Got my Kindle. It's like the best thing ever.
Totally.
And these authors are just tremendous. You know, I take my hat off to them and I think, oh, I wish I could write as quick as that and as good as that. You know, and I think that is a really good thing for a writer. It keeps you wanting to hone your craft more and more and more. The more you read, the more you learn, the more that you can look at other authors and go, my goodness, that was just fabulous. How do I do that? You know? And it's
Right?
the best thing that we can do, I think, to our
Yeah.
craft.
Yeah. That's
100,
really
a million
that.
percent.
Oh yeah. It's interesting. That's one word I would never, because I love my cozies, but I would never use cozy to describe Agatha Christie, like ever. Like
Right? Yeah.
like I said, I love my cozies and I love my psychological thrillers and I love my horror, which we're gonna tap into because you actually give a whole lot of nod to slasher films and horror, which is like I
I
said,
do.
so you gave us so many different elements in your little village, and within the characters themselves. But like I said, cozy is not a word I would ever use with Agatha Christie. So that's a final
Yeah,
note on that.
I absolutely agree.
Like, yeah, no. Everything that you said, absolutely yes. She tackled all of these dark things about humans.
Yeah.
And can I just say this again, this is where I'm laughing out loud. Henry and his zombie phase, absolutely hilarious.
That actually was true because that was my own son. That was actually all true. I
I
just
was gonna
popped that
ask, I
out
was like,
there.
was that like real, like were those conversations you had with your child?
It was so real. It was ridiculous.
I
He
was
was obsessed.
dying. That was
I think he
adorable.
still hopes to meet some marauding zombies one day, but very disappointed.
Maybe he'll just have to write his own zombie stories.
Exactly.
So in the book, you reference various horror movies. You talk about Halloween, Texas Chainsaw Massacre. You talk about Friday the 13th. So the summer slashers and
Yeah.
things of that nature. You also, because of the time of year, you mentioned pumpkins and ghosts and the Halloween vibes. So can I just say thank you for that? That
Yeah,
made I love that time of year as well.
my favorite. It's my favorite time of year by far, by far.
Right? Right? So do you have a favorite summer slasher?
Magical.
It is magical.
Oh, I do. Well, my favorite is without a doubt the 1978 Halloween. Without a doubt, it's my ultimate favorite. It always will be. I love John Carpenter. I liked Fall. I loved the Fog. You know, the original one with Adrian Barbeau in it. It was tremendous, absolutely tremendous. But for me, Halloween 1978 is just quintessential slasher. It just captures the essence of the time of the season. But I love that song as well. And I think that might have been in the book. If not, it's in the second book. And but the reason that I love Halloween is that Carpenter didn't need to go full gore. He didn't need to do it because there is actually there is that beautiful, very simple storyline to Halloween, and it's there. And he didn't need to saturate it in gore. You know, rib cages getting ripped out and brains getting eaten and heads getting lopped off left, right, and centre. It didn't, because that was detracted from the storyline. And I see this a lot with a lot of horror movies, and I think it's just for shock element, and I get that, but it can really detract if you don't have a storyline, you need to put it in, right? Because there's nothing else happening. But Halloween, it was a very simple story. On screen, the book was slightly different, but in the movie, it was a simple storyline, and that's all it needed to be, and it was beautifully done. I thought the direction was wonderful. I loved it. I loved the music. I loved that musical score, that Halloween theme tune. I mean, you hear that there's leaves falling, you're in the moment, you know, you're waiting for the boiler suit and the white mask to creep over your shoulder. It's magical, you know, it's wonderful. Okay, not magical, it's horrifying, but it's also it's also magical. And Gina Lee Curtis was just tremendous. Everybody was wonderful in that movie. I just loved it, and it was one that I saw very young. I way younger than I should have, but you know, that was the 80s. You know, we're
Me too.
fucking it's our generation. We're watching
Right?
terrible pictures. But yeah, so I'll always look back fondly on Halloween, and I watch it every year without fail. As soon as October hits, Halloween goes on in here, and that theme tune reverberates all around my house for the whole of October, and I love it, and I'll never change that. And so, without a doubt, that's my favourite. And I mean, I think I love them all, Michelle. All the classics, you know, I love them all. But that will always be my favourite.
There, like you said, there as and when you were talking about it, I remember the very first time I saw it, and I didn't, I just remember like wondering where is this story going because the opening scene is he's driving the car and the song is Mr. Sandman, and you're absolutely right, and you're like, why is this song in a Halloween movie as an opening scene, right? Like,
Yeah,
and you just kind of
absolutely.
it feels eerie. You instantly you're like, okay, I'm uncomfortable. It instantly makes you uncomfortable, and
It's very much so, and it's just the way, and even the way that they did the cinematography. You know, you're watching it through the mask.
yeah,
You know, when Michael
yeah,
puts the mask over the camera per se, you know, and you're seeing it through the slits of the mask, and you
yeah,
see him picking it up, and you know what's happening. You know it's a child right away, and you're thinking, well, where is this going? And then the sister, and then that moment when the parents come home and he's standing outside with the butcher knife, you know, just gone. There's nothing there. And that moment, that nothing there, and there was probably an element of that I thought about when I was writing that, because there's a bit where Darcy mentions the eyes of the killer several times in that end scene where there's nothing there,
yeah.
and she can see that. And if that human, any thread of human connection is gone, you have no chance, you know. And that's a great example, that movie. But that little scene there, just at the beginning, when the parents are just so obviously confused and don't even understand what they're about to walk into. that's what happened in that home. You know, they have no idea, and you just know you're like, you can't imagine that, you know, and it was so brilliantly done. So I
Yes.
think so for that reason, the fact that there isn't a lot of gore because there didn't need to be, and the musical score, that theme tune for Halloween that Carpenter wrote himself, is
Yes.
just magical.
I know. It's the dun 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 dun
Oh,
dun dun dun,
right?
right?
You hear it
It's
and you're like, where's my
brilliant.
mask? I go, where's my boiler
I know you're
suit?
all like, all right.
Amazing.
Yeah. So
I know. Here we
talk
go.
about 80s nostalgia. So
Mm.
right? But yes, the slasher. So, like I said, the elements of everything in there. You gave it, some nods to music nostalgia. You gave it some pop culture nostalgia, and then the time frame of the story, how everything takes place, within these few days. And tension, the tension, like, so everything was just very entertaining. So, like I said, looking forward to, more Darcy. I'm so happy that you're still writing. Thank you for sharing your
Thank you.
story. Thank you for hanging out. Thank you for being so patient because it took us several years to get here.
No, you're so. Thank you so much for having me, Michelle. It's just been such an pleasure to talk with you and hang out. I didn't feel as if we've had a podcast. I feel like just hanging out, you know, and it's been such a pleasure. Thank you so much.
Well,
I've loved it.
thank you. And that's exactly how I want it to feel. Like we share some stories, we share a little bit of nuggets, some writing nuggets. Because otherwise, if the whole time, if it was
No.
me going, so how old were you when you first wrote your first story? I mean, it's not to say that there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with that. That's just not how this show goes. This show is going to be everywhere.
Yeah.
It's going to give you all kinds of fun stuff. And, with
And
coffee.
I love that. Yeah, just the natural curves of things. And but next time, I insist that we have a giant bag of Doritos, and that we just crunch. Okay, actually, that may be terrible for listeners because all you hear is crunching. But still, the concept's good.
Hey, oh my gosh. It's so funny you
Funny to
say that
rethink that. It's terrible.
because so part of so you're the third episode for this month because this has been my birthday month and I'm celebrating it all month long. And for my
I
birthday,
know, and a huge happy birthday to you.
thank
Huge,
you.
huge, huge happy birthday.
Thank you. I bought a
It's
bag
my
of
daughter's birthday month as well, actually, May. So
happy birthday. That's awesome.
wonderful people born in May.
Yes. So your episode is actually so my birthday is Beltane, the actual May Day, and then your episode is
I love
actually gonna
that.
drop on what's known as Hawthorn Tree Day, which is also very significant in the Gaelic world. On 5/13 is when this episode is dropping. So kudos to to the hawthorn tree. Like the hawthorn tree has huge significance in literature and folklore. How cool is that?
I love it. Thank you so much. I love it. Thank you, Michelle. And again, thank you so much for having me. It's been wonderful.
Absolutely. And I wish you all the best. And then I wanted to ask you if you
Thank
would
you.
please say the tagline of Go Forth and Be Magical before we end this chat.
Go forth and be magical and very shiny.